Hi again. Welcome to our analysis of the IPL teams on our channel IPL Buck Buck. Now here we're talking about our final team in this phase, and it's obviously the Royal Challengers of Bangalore. This is a team that's gone through various changes in ownership and has a very hasty management structure, if I could say so. Now, Akshat, Tom, and Shiva again going to help me break down this team. So, Akshat, why don't you get us going with what you think an ideal 11 could look like for this team?
So I think the first name that puts himself on the sheet is obviously Kohli. So he's the captain. Along with him, I'd play with Padikkal, who's got heaps of runs, and I think it's only a matter of time till he gets that India cap. At three, I'd go with again a left field choice. I'd have Washington Sundar there. He's done brilliantly at the Test format, and I see no reason as to why he can't bat at this number in the IPL. He's a very balanced cricketer. He has a healthy strike rate, so he fits the role of number three. At four, I'd go with AB de Villiers. Again, there's not much of an introduction that he requires. At five, I'd go with Mr. IPL, Glenn Maxwell.
Isn't that Suresh
At
Raina?
I was being sarcastic. He's never sort of put the IPL on
Okay.
fire, so that's Mr. IPL. At six, I'd go with Shahbaz Ahmed, this hard-hitting batsman from Bengal who also bowls quality left-arm spin. Great all-rounder. At seven, I'd go with Daniel Sams from Australia. I really rate him. I watched him play at the Big Bash and he sort of set that league on fire with his batting as well as his bowling. He's more known for his bowling, but I saw him score 70 of I think 20 balls for Sydney Thunders, and that was just berserk. At eight, I'd go with Jamieson. It'd be interesting to see if he can live up to that price tag. 9, 10 pick themselves. I'd go with Siraj and Saini. And 11, I'd go with Yuzi Chahal. Um, a couple of things, a couple of alternatives. I'd like to see someone of the likes of Mohammad Azharuddin, who's done brilliantly, also get an opportunity throughout the course of this tournament, as well as Sachin Baby, who's done fairly well for himself over the last couple of years in domestic cricket. I also rate Adam Zampa really highly. I feel he's the second best leg spinner after Rashid Khan in the white ball format. So I'd like to see him get a couple of games. It'd be interesting to see how they actually start him in. But he's somebody who gets 4 or 5 games on good tracks. So the balance of the side I think is beautiful because they have a leg spinner in Chahal, they have a left arm spinner in Shahbaz, and an off spinner in Washi. They have Siraj and Saini, Jameson and Sam. So essentially, you have seven quality bowlers, each of them capable of giving you 4 overs and a very dynamic batting lineup. So essentially, you have 28 overs of a bank where you can pick and choose, use your PNC and get 20 overs. And you have Kohli, Padikkal, Washington, De Villiers, Maxwell, Shahbaz, Sams. The righty lefties also sort of maintain. You can have a flexible batting order with the likes of a Shahbaz being promoted if you need an impetus to up the scoring run rate, or you could also have the likes of a Maxwell if you lost Kohli early and you want to sort of make up on a track like a Wankhede that suits his game. Besides that, I see this team to have covered most of the bases, and I like the balance of the side.
Okay, then, Tom, what changes would you make to this team?
I mean, can you tell that Simon Cattich is their coach? I mean, they've got how many Australian players do they have? I think they've got a lot of shrewd pickups as well. Like someone we haven't mentioned, Dan Christian. He wherever he goes, he wins. He's just one of those people that they've RCB. They're big chip on their shoulders that they've never won. And Dan Christian, hasn't he? He must have won a stupid amount of T20 franchise titles. So I'll be surprised if he doesn't make an appearance. And he was playing. He has been playing T20 recently. Josh Philippe, if we were talking about this time last year, he had a bad IPL, but that was in Dubai. He's still a quality
Just to
player.
stop you right there, Josh Philippe is actually pulled out of the IPL and he's been replaced by New Zealand's latest addition to their T20 squad,
Finn
Finn
Allen.
Allen.
Yeah,
Sorry for interrupting.
yeah, I forgot that. But I mean, anyway, Kane Richardson, very good bowler. He played, these players that are in the Australian T20 team. that don't really get that much. They don't really get that much credit. But the Australian T20 team is a good team. And Daniel Sams, as Akshar said, he's a very good player. I'm surprised that he was playing for DC, wasn't he? I'm surprised DC let him go because he's a good player, and I think DC will really rue that. There's not really much you can say. I mean, obviously that number 6 spot. There's other players who can come in there, other Indian players that you know more about than me. But yeah, I've never really seen Washington Sundar bat up the order in the IPL. I think it'll be interesting to see how he takes that on. And with Kohli, he bats 1 for RCB. You really pushed everyone up the order because De Villiers, he sometimes gets left way too late in games. It's the problem with AB De Villiers and with this team in general, with Maxwell as well, another player that gets he gets left too late and the game's already gone. And I hope they don't make that mistake this time around.
Shiv, is there anything you think is missing in this team per se?
I think for me, one major issue is Yuzvendra Chahal. I don't think he's bowled well for a while. I mean, he got married and then I think he forgot how to bowl, for me at least. So I think that is an issue. And you obviously have Adam Zampa. So I think they also need to figure out that if Chahal bowls badly, you're probably going to want to drop him, bring Zampa in. So that there goes one foreign spot, and you're obviously going to play De Villiers, Maxwell, and Jamieson. So that Daniel Sam spot, that is where you look to bring someone else in. Other than that, I think one thing I've noticed about the IPL is that, you know, whenever a player gets injured or backs out of the IPL, teams usually bring in a replacement, and those replacements turn out to be really good. For RCB itself, they had Chris Gale, who gave them a lot of years of good cricket, and he came in as a replacement. And there are a few other good examples as well. So I think they have to give him a shot. You have Finn Allen, give Finn Allen a shot and see how he goes. Other than that, I think the bowling is set, the batting is set. I really like the batting order. So yeah, I mean, give Azharuddin a shot, give Finn Allen a shot, and what is his name? Adam Zampa. And other than that, I think the team is pretty set. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, then. Another thing I wanted to bring up was basically the fact that when you look at this RCB team, you don't really see that out and out death bowler. How do you think, or who do you think can address that issue this season? They had Morris and Isuru Udana last season, but this season they look relatively thin in that field. So, is there anyone y'all can think of who can take up that mantle this year?
I really rate Sams, especially in the subcontinent condition, because he predominantly bowls those cutters. So I think he'll be somebody who would do really well on the slowest tracks, and it'll be hard to hit him towards the latter half of the innings when the ball gets softer. So I'd probably give him a go. And along with him, I mean, Jamieson, I don't see him as somebody who's going to make too much of an impact towards the latter half. You'd want him to have the hard ball where he can sort of, similar to Moni Markle, get lateral movement off the wicket and get wickets up front, as well as give him a couple in the middle overs. So I see Siraj as well, another person who's a steady customer. He bowls that hard length. So I see Siraj and Sams as 2 options to bowl in the death. But that's a very important point, Ahan, because this is an issue that has plagued them for the last 4-5 seasons. RCB is already known to score runs, but their bigger issue is that they concede more runs than they score. So their bowling in the death has always costed them games, and it's hard to sort of, pick out one bowler. Like you have the likes of Bhuvneshwar Kumar for SRH, you have the likes of a Bumrah for MI, but you don't have that one person here. So it'll have to be a responsibility which will be shared. But I personally feel the best people for that role is a Sams and a Siraj.
Well, I mentioned him before, but Dan Christian, I've seen him for Notts in the T20 Blast. He's the most annoying player to play against. Even when me as an Essex fan, we've had Adam Zampa on our team, we still get Dan Christian. He comes in, and as I said, it's just part of his knack. He's old. however old he is. And I think he'll do a job. He can do a job for them. I think Kohli has brought him in because he knows they would know each other, and he knows he can do a job. He's not worried himself. He's a proven cricket player, Dan Christian. But I think when the pressure's off, I think you've mentioned all these other players. They still yet to prove themselves. They need that cool, calm head at the death. Dan Christian for me.
Sure.
For me, it would have to be Siraj. I think I really rate him as a bowler. I think he should get an opportunity in the Indian limited over side as well. And so for me, it would have to be him. No question about that.
Short and precise.
Tom, do you see Dan Christian as somebody who can give you 4 overs, or you're just going to ask him? If you were Kohli, you just ask him to give you those 2 in the death, similar to what Russell does at KKR. How would you go about, giving Christian the ball?
For me, I think he's very similar to someone like a Liam Plunkett, who he can bowl where he'll just do a job wherever you want. Probably he'll do a few middle overs, but he'll end up give Maxwell a few and give Christian a few, sneak him in, and suddenly that's 4 overs gone. I think he probably won't bowl out all the time. As Kohli becomes a more and more experienced captain, and I'm not saying that he isn't already, but he's not afraid just to go and give someone 2 overs. He doesn't have to bowl them out just because they're there in the team. So yeah, I can see him just coming in for those last 2 death overs even.
Yeah.
Okay, then now let's talk about another major issue, you could say, with the RCB setup. So at the end of every failure season, you could say, the RCB team, instead of sticking and believing in their players, they usually change their entire setup and they change their entire background setup. Now, I think this is the first time in a while that they've actually stuck with Mike Hesson and Simon Katich after a season that they could and should have done better in. In this phase, they made a couple of questionable decisions, such as letting go of Morris and then bidding higher than what they bid for him to get him back last season. On top of that, they've invested in someone like a Maxwell who's not really been at his best in the IPL, and a Jamieson who's not really played any kind of T20 cricket, be it domestic or internationally. So, what do you think this management structure needs to be for that to change?
No, so Ahan, if you look at the the teams that have done very well globally, 2 names pop up, right? The Mumbai Indians and the Chennai Knight Riders. And one thing that they've done really well is that they formed that core group of players, or that nucleus of their team, and each of them knows their roles and responsibilities to perfection. Or Surya Kumar Yadav, when he goes out to bat at 3, he knows he has to score a strike rate of 150. And Ishan Kishan knows he has to get it to 170, 175. And Pollard and the Pandya brothers know that they need to get 50 runs of the last 3 overs. And that understanding happens with time, once you start playing with each other and once you start trusting each other's abilities. The issue with Bangalore is I can't name more than 2 players, and the 2 players are very obvious choices, Kohli and an ABD, who know what their roles really are. In 14 years, I've not seen a player apart from these 2 who are actually known to be RCB players. Like, they don't carry that identity of belonging to RCB. And that's sort of reflective of the fact of how they think. And I think consistency is a major reason as to why they've not been that successful or played to the potential. This team isn't a bad team on paper, it's a championship winning team. But the problem is that they don't know their roles and responsibilities, or there's no clarity. And with Mike Hesson coming in and that structure being implemented, we did see a certain amount of improvement last season when they reached, I think they finished 3rd. And it'd be interesting to see how they go this year. I rate Simon Katich quite highly. He had a couple of seasons as assistant coach of KKR under Jack Callis, I think. And we happened to win one of those years. So he does know how to win an IPL title. But it'd be interesting to see how he extrapolates those learnings into a team like RCB, which is so sort of fixated on fluidity rather than consistency.
Tom, do you have anything to say to that?
Yeah, I'm worried about, as you said, how much they pay for Carl Jamieson. I really like him. I think he's he's a good Test and ODI player, but he's really unproven at T20 for me. I was just actually looking up his stats. He's played, if we're looking at T20 internationals, because he's coming up against international players, that's where the pressure is. He's played 8 games, 4 wickets, an average of 70, and a 10 economy rate, 10 runs and over. So whether he can actually, he's their big player. He's a bowler. They've spent massive on him. He's going to have to play, and it'll be interesting to see how he actually performs if he can do it on the biggest stage.
Sure.
For me, I don't know. It's something about RCB. They always seem to make these big buys, and they hope that these big buys will solve all of their problems, but just doesn't work out. I remember they bought Timil Mills one year, hoping that he'd really do good stuff for them. Didn't work out. They went with Yuvraj one year. They always spend around 15 crores on one player. One year it was Yuvraj, one year it was Timil Mills. So I don't know. I can't explain it properly. Just there's no consistency, and like Akshat said, you can think of Virat and ABD as RCB players, but other than that, there's really no consistency. Maybe I think this year will be better because you have Siraj, you have Saini. There's a bit more consistency in the side. You have Boshi as well, who's really Particle. So I think the structure that's come in is really helping them, and hopefully they will be able to. Overall, they can help Kohli win at least one IPL title. That's
You
all.
hope.
But having said that, I actually feel, like I said in the KKR video as well, this is going to be a good season for Maxwell all around because it seems like the pressure is going to be absorbed off him. You have 2 big names batting around. You have Kohli and De Villiers, who are probably the best contemporary um, white ball players around. So Maxwell isn't really that big name in a team anymore. He's not the same Maxwell that was in the Kings 11 team, where every single game their hopes rid on his shoulders and his shoulders only. So you have all these other people to share the responsibility. And yeah, I'm interested to see how a Padikkal and a Shahbaz and these youngsters really do because they're known to be really explosive players in their own rights.
Do you think Glenn Maxwell's going to hit a 6 this year?
Yeah, I think he's going to hit a 6 in the first game of the season. You heard it here first.
Okay, then finally, my last question before we move on to where you see this team finishing is Bangalore have had a terrible retention policy. Now, going into this season, you'd want to retain, let's say, maybe actually the entire starting 11. You'd want them to be a part of this team in the next cycle. But in the past, they've made errors in, say, a KL Rahul.
Big
They've made
error.
errors by letting go of a person like Chris Gale. So
Mayank Agarwal.
Mayank Agarwal, exactly. So there have been so many players Bangalore have just let go of. Do you think changing the structure now would seriously hamper their future because you can't let go of an AB and a Kohli?
I mean, I'd probably go with a Kohli and an AB, but the third player, if Chahal was bowling well, I'd probably go with him. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm digressing a little bit, but I think a point to flag here or a point of discussion is Chahal's form for sure. Because even though Bangalore's bowlers have sort of not been the best in the IPL, Chahal, somebody who's done consistently well for them over the past sort of 6-7 seasons. And it's because of his performances in red that he's got an opportunity to play for the country. So it'd be interesting to see, how Chahal goes this season because he's coming into an IPL with the worst form that he's probably ever carried throughout his international and domestic career. And if Chahal doesn't do well, he sort of, forms that pin that connects all the dots around him. It'd be interesting to see whether Washington and Shabazz can, share that responsibility because he's a huge player for them. He bowls in the power play with the new ball, one of the few leg spinners with that ability to bowl with the new ball. He picks wickets at regular intervals. So that's going to be a big one. But yeah, now coming back to your point, Ahan, I see a Kohli and a a Kohli and a De Villiers walking in there, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a Washington Sundar there as well, because again, he's both skilled. He can bat as well as bowl.
Okay.
Just as an opposing point of view, I don't know if you keep AB de Villiers, you really, for this big auction, you're not thinking about just 1 year, you're thinking about the next few. And is AB de Villiers, say in a few years, he's going to be 40 years old in a few years' time. Are you going to really hone your team around him, or are you thinking Kohli, Sundar, and then do you just go for someone like a Devdutt Pagadikal? If he has a great IPL again this year, you want to keep him because young Indian openers, they come at a premium. So I mean, say if you put Prithvi Shaw in the auction, he'd go for loads. I think the same would do for Devdutt Pagadikal if he has a good tournament. So it'd be interesting to see that.
Tom, that's actually an important point because I don't want to compare the AB situation to the MS Dhoni situation, and it's more on these players, like if they want to continue or not. I don't see an RCB not retaining a De Villiers if he puts his hand up and says, hey, I would like to play for the next couple of seasons. Or similarly with a CSK not retaining the likes of Dhoni. So I see it as something more on, the decision is more on the player, whether he'd like to put his name in for the next couple of seasons. But I still personally feel, even though he's not playing for South Africa, he's good enough to walk in and win South Africa that T20 World Cup in India if he plays that tournament. You have Quinton de Kock, Aiden Markram. I don't rate Bavuma too highly, but having De Villiers there along with a Faf, Faf still plays T20 cricket for them. So having Faf 3, De Villiers 4, de Kock opening, that's going to be an intimidating top 4 to bowl to.
David Miller, yeah.
Yeah, and a Miller there. And these guys have all played like a lot of IPL. So, they know these conditions in and out, probably as well as the Indian cricketers.
So I guess that kind of sums up analysis of this RCB squad. So Shiv, you've been awfully silent throughout this discussion. So where do you see this team finishing?
I thought I remember saying that Sunrisers will finish 4th, but I think it'll be between Sunrisers and RCB. Both teams have many quality players, so I'm not sure. It'll be between 4th and 5th for sure.
Tom?
Just looking at the other teams, they don't have that clutch gene for me. RCB, even though they got those players, we know, they're like my favourite enemy, Tottenham Hotspur. They got great players, but they ain't got the minerals. So I think they might slip away. They might not even make the playoffs. And they've had better teams than this and missed out on the playoffs. So it would not surprise me in the slightest if they miss out on the playoffs.
Okay, then Akshat.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Tom had to say. I think it'd be between KKR and RCB for that 4th spot, with KKR just about topping them. So RCB 5th. They aren't qualifying, in my opinion.
So the general consensus in this room is that RCB is slightly going to miss out on the top 4 spot. Now that doesn't need to be true, but we want to hear what you all think about it. And I guess that's the end of our analysis. Please remember to like.
Where do you think they're going to finish?
Now you've really put me on the spot.
So far
I think it's between the 4th and 5th, maybe. Yeah, sorry, what were you saying there, Akshat?
I said so far you've been doing the easy job of just moderating the event. So Tom rightly put you on the spot. It was required. But yeah, it's the same thing, right? You said 4th, 5th. So we sort of resonating the same points.
Yeah, when you look at this team, there's just a bit of a lacking in that death bowling, which I think has always been a problem for them. And they've just not been able to address that again.
No, also it's I don't see any continuity, if that makes sense. Like it seems a lot
Yeah.
forced, like a homogeneous sort of team where like everybody sort of one position moves on to the other.
I don't see the logic behind replacing a Morris with a Jamieson, because a Jamieson is not a Morris. A Morris can bowl at any time, and the Morris can score that 25 of 10 balls you keep talking about. Can Jamieson do both? We don't know, but anything's possible. But keeping that in mind, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to our videos on our channel. And we'll be back presenting our post-match thoughts after games to you all. And I hope we can continue this journey going forward. Thank you for watching our video, and we'll be back soon.